So to achieve this dress, first of all, start with the back. It's not compulsory, but I like to start with the back. So I'll fold my back piece into two using my biggest measurement. So in this case, to be the bust measurement, obviously, I will mark zip allowance of 1.5 inches. I will mark the shoulder measurement from the zip line. I like to assume that you already know how to do this part, but let's just start from here. I will mark the armhole, and then I will go ahead and connect. Now from the zip line, I will go in by 3 inches. I will make a mark. Then on the armhole line, I will go down by ½ inch. And then I will slant back to the shoulder, which is the shoulder slope. And then I will get the midpoint of my armhole from that slant. Get the midpoint, then come in by ½ inch. Connect back to the shoulder. And then from the zip line, I will mark quarter of my bust measurement, my bust divided by 4. I will mark that, and then I will curve the rest of my armhole to that point. Also from the zip line, I will mark my waist divided by 4 plus extra 1 inch or 0.75 for that. I will connect to that bust point. On the zip line on this edge, I will go in by 1 inch, and then I will connect that 1 inch back to the shoulder or back to the neckline. I'll go ahead and add my seam allowances, and then I will cut. I will also add a dart to this back. I'll use like a waist dart on the back. For the front, I will also fold my fabric into two using the biggest measurement, and I will divide my biggest measurement by 4 and add 5 inches. This is like princess dart, as I can see, but I don't think it's a bustier, so I will just use a regular princess dart. So the same thing I did for the back, you just go in 3 inches, come down ½ inch on the armhole part, get the midpoint, connect back to, go in by ½ inch, connect back to the shoulder, and then mark your bust and curve the rest to the bust point. So next I'll mark side measurement, and then I will connect and then add extra seam allowance. For the back, like I said, it's going to be a waist dart. If I'm making this, I'll definitely use a waist dart. So from the chest line, I will go in by my dart, that's the bust span measurement divided by 2 plus ½ inch. I'll mark that up and down and connect, and then go out on that line by 0.75 on both sides. So for the front, I will mark my nipple point, shoulder to nipple. I will also mark shoulder to under bust, and I will rule those out. Next now, I will mark my bust span measurement, my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 plus extra ½ inch. I'll mark that on the nipple, shoulder to nipple line, and also on the half length. And then I will mark 0.75 on both sides and connect in a slant like so. Then from here, I will connect to the middle of the armhole, and then I will come down the armhole by ½ inch and then connect back to the bust point like so. Then I'll go on and extend that line by 1.5 inches and then curve it back to the armhole like so. You notice that I did not mark the neck or cut out the neck. We'll be doing that later on. So go ahead now. You should go ahead and cut your shoulder slope, cut your armhole, your side seams, and also your zip slant. And then for the front, the same thing, your shoulder slant, your Princessing your armhole, sides, and then the rest of the dart. So after cutting now, we're now going to mark out the zip allowance again. Since we removed that 1 inch, our zip allowance is no longer complete. So you go back and mark a new zip allowance of 1.5 inches all the way to the top. After that, you now go and sew that zip allowance first. So let's say this is the sewing now that we are doing. I'll just fold it in so that we can continue. Then after sewing, you just iron it apart and then open it this way. Then get this center piece for the front and place it right side together. So because it's folded and ironed, there's already a crease in the middle. So from that midpoint, you mark your neckline. So your neck width for the front, or your neck width in general can be, let's say 3.5 inches or 4 inches. So you're just from there going to connect it to the middle of your armhole, which is already the end of that piece because of the princess that we have cut. So you are now going to cut the back and the front together using that slant, that curve like that. So this is it. So at this point you can go ahead. If I was sewing, I will go ahead now and join my front pieces all together and also join my back, like turn it with lining, do all of that and join them together, like sew the upper part completely. After that, I will now measure from one armhole that's on the chest part to the other end. I will measure that and write it down. Let's assume that I got 13 inches now. I'll measure it and write it down, 13 inches, and then I'll measure the back. In most cases they are always the same. So let's assume that it was the same in this case too. So 13 for the front plus 13 for the back will give us 26. So you need to take another measurement, which is your round the shoulder measurement. So let's assume that my round the shoulder measurement is 46. I'm going to remove 26 from that 46 and we're going to have 20 inches. So this 20 inches, we are going to divide it by 2. We'll share it for the both sleeves. So if you're cutting your fabric on fold, that 10 now is going to be 5 inches. So on fold, you cut out 5 inches, but we are going to add allowance. So it's going to be 5 plus 1, which will now give us 6. But because of the way this dress is falling, I will add up to 3 inches so that it falls off, like relaxes off even more. So we have like 8 inches, but we're still going to use that 6 inches though. So now you now go and cut out 16 inches of fabric, like 16 inches long worth of fabric like this. I think I will do like 6 inches wide and then I'll fold into 2. So now I'll have like 3 inches. So we're going to attach that to one side of the back armhole and then attach it to one side of the front armhole. So it's going to now connect the two together, like so. On this other side now we are going to add a cap sleeve. So you just go, I'm just going to use a proper, like a full sleeve pattern to demonstrate. So this is your sleeve. This is what a typical sleeve will look like. So what you're going to do is now measure your armhole from the shoulder to the middle of the armhole, or if you want it to sit slightly below the middle, you measure to that point and then place that same measurement around the curve of your sleeve like this. Then for the length, you are now going to mark the length and then connect the both points together. Now you're adding 2 inches of allowance to each side because it's either you're turning the sleeve with a lining or you're folding it. So you add extra 2 inches. And also notch the middle, because by the time you cut this out, they are going to look the same. If you don't notch it, you'll be very confused. So you go ahead now and cut. So the part at the sleeve will go into the sleeve and then the other part You also make sure that the other part is more than 6 inches. Remember that 6 inches we calculated from the round the shoulder. It should be more than that 6 inches. But okay, maybe not more than, but it should not be less than that 6 inches. So this is it for the cap sleeve. So next, now you will measure round your neck, including that extension, that piece on the side on one sleeve all the way round. But I will do this after I've already joined my shoulders together and everything. So it's more like, okay, let me put it this way. So it's more like this. You start from center back. You're not adding, the zip allowance is not included in this measurement. The zip allowance is not included. So you, from the center back, you measure round this band also back to the center back. So we are going to use that measurement now. Fold our fabric into a triangular form like so. Then we are going to mark, I think for me I will use like 6.5, 7 inches for the width of this band. So we're just going to mark it like this, and then mark it again like this on the lower part. Then I will connect. Then where this line is, I will make sure that it is the measurement I got from measuring that round plus extra 1 inch. So once I have exactly that, we are good to cut. The remaining part that is slanting out can remain that way. It's actually very useful. We'll just go turn this out, finish the raw edges, and this will be attached round the neckline from one zip allowance to through to the front and then back in this fashion. So next, now is time to cut out the skirt. So the skirt has 4 key splits, and one pleat I would typically use 8 inches for one pleat. And then let's assume that after sewing my upper part, I measured my waist from zip allowance to zip allowance and I got 38 inches. So I'm going to add extra for the pleat. So I said 8 inches for one pleat. So 8 times 4 for 4 of the pleats is going to be 32. So I'm going to add this 32 to 38, which will now be my new waist measurement. So this will now give me 70, all right? Now this 70 inches will now be my new waist. But in order to cut the flare part, we are going to divide this 70 inches further. So get your fabric, fold it into two like so by the length side, and then fold it again like so to form in form of a triangle, as you can see. Then you divide that 70 inches by 3.14, and then let's say we got 22.3. 22.3 is what you are now marking like this from the top all the way around. Mark, mark, mark. And then on that line, I'm going to place my half length. You place your half length. Let's say my half length is 19. I'll place 19 on that line and then mark the remaining length of my dress plus extra 2 inches. Let's say for me now it's like 50, 52. So from that zip line now, from that waistline, I'm just marking 52 inches all around in this fashion. Now sometimes your fabric may not be enough just like this, so you will need to get another piece of fabric, join it to that part, and then trim the two of them together just to complete the length. But if your fabric is long enough, that step will not be necessary. Then just cut it out, join it there, iron it open, and then bring it back and trim so that it's exactly the same on all sides. The next step will now be to create your pleats, two in front, two at the back. Join your upper and join your zipper, add your zipper, and that's basically it on how to cut this style. I hope this explanation was helpful. If you have any dress you want to make and don't know how, you can send it to me and I'll make a video for you. Thank you for watching.